My name is Callum, and if you had asked me a year ago what certainty looked like, I would have pointed to her without hesitation. Leia, with her soft voice, bright eyes, and the kind of presence that made even the coldest room feel warmer, simply because she walked into it. We'd been together for 6 years, 3 of them as husband and wife. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was steady, predictable in the best possible way. A quiet rhythm I believed would last forever. Our anniversary that year fell on a Friday, and somehow that felt significant, as if the universe had taken the day seriously for us. I reserved a rooftop restaurant, nothing overly flashy, but elegant enough to remind us that we were still choosing each other, still making the effort. When she arrived, she was wearing the pale lilac blouse I loved, the one that made her look as though she carried her own sunlight. She hugged me, kissed my cheek, and for a brief moment I believed the evening might stitch us back together. But moments can change without warning. We hadn't even ordered drinks when her phone buzzed. She sighed, looked at the screen, and murmured, "It's work." By then I was used to her marketing firm consuming her time, so I didn't think much of it. She sent a quick reply, placed her phone down, and then it buzzed again and again. "Everything all right?" I asked. "It's just Ronan," she said. Her boss, the man whose name I'd heard countless times, always described as brilliant and demanding. But tonight, the way she said his name felt different, almost charged, as if he wasn't simply her boss anymore. He was a looming presence. She couldn't sit still. Before I could ask anything else, someone tapped her shoulder. We turned, and standing there was the man himself, Ronan Ward. Tall, wearing an immaculate suit, with an expression carved into something sharp, his eyes passed right over me as if I were nothing more than forgotten wall decoration. "Leia," he said with a smirk that sent heat crawling up my neck. "You didn't answer my message." She stiffened. "I'm out. It's my anniversary." He nodded as though he were processing mildly inconvenient information. Then he finally looked at me. "You must be the husband," he said, extending his hand as though he were doing me a favor. I shook it only because I'd been raised to be polite. "Callum," Ronan replied, as if I hadn't already introduced myself. Then he turned back to her, and this time he didn't bother pretending to be courteous. "You know," he said casually, "I always tell the office she's mine at work." He smiled, but nothing about it sounded like a joke. Something bitter twisted inside my gut. I waited for Leia to correct him, laugh it off, or push back even slightly, but she didn't. She simply froze, her eyes moving between us, and for the first time ever, I saw something resembling fear on her face. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, carefully keeping my voice steady. Ronan leaned against our table as though he belonged there. "It means she practically runs the department. She's indispensable. I rely on her more than anyone." His gaze drifted over her again, "and I expect her to be available at all times." My stomach dropped. Leia still wouldn't look at me. Her cheeks were flushed, her fingers trembling slightly. "That's enough, Ronan," she whispered. He tilted his head, amused. "You didn't tell him." Her glare was sharp and panicked. He ignored it. "Oh, come on," he said lightly. "He's going to find out eventually. You can't hide how essential you've become." That was when something inside me cracked. "Tell me what?" I asked again, this time with no softness left. Finally, Leia raised her eyes to mine. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. And in that silence, I heard everything she wasn't brave enough to say. Silence isn't empty. It's full. Full of truths someone doesn't want to speak. My chest went hollow. The restaurant noise blurred until all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. Then she whispered, "Callum, there's something I need to explain about me and Ronan." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Her expression carried enough weight to tilt the ground beneath my feet. In that instant, I understood that whatever she was about to confess had already changed everything. Call me naive, but I used to believe love was simple. Two people choosing each other every day. Back then, if someone had asked me what certainty looked like, I would have said, "Leia, sweet, steady, thoughtful Leia. My wife of 3 years, the woman who could calm my storms with nothing more than a smile. So, when our anniversary dinner arrived and she walked in with her boss following her like a shadow she couldn't escape, the ground beneath me shifted. Leia sat across from me, shoulders tense, eyes filled with something that looked painfully like fear. Ronan stood there with his arms crossed, scanning the room as though he owned it and her. When I asked what was happening, Leia's voice came out soft, cracking at the edges. "It's not what it looks like." A phrase that almost always means the opposite. She kept her gaze fixed on the table, avoiding my eyes and avoiding the truth sitting between us. Things at work, responsibilities, late nights, travel, stress. Excuses that sounded exhausted even while she said them. I asked her how any of that required her boss to casually claim she was his. That word had fallen from Ronan's mouth earlier as though it meant nothing, as though she wasn't my wife. She winced, whispering that he had exaggerated. Before she could explain further, Ronan stepped closer as if he had every right to insert himself into our marriage. "Leia," he said, using a nickname I'd never heard in my life, "your team needs you tonight." "Tonight?" I repeated. "Our anniversary tonight." Ronan didn't even bother hiding his irritation. "She's essential." He said it like she was a tool rather than a person. And for one heartbeat, it worked. Leia almost folded beneath his tone. But then, something inside her changed. Her spine straightened, her chin lifted. When she looked at him again, her expression wasn't fear. It was resolve. "I told you I would help where I could," she said calmly. "Not that I belong to you." For the first time, Ronan looked slightly thrown off. "You rely on me," she continued. "But you don't own me. Not at work. Not anywhere." That was the crack in the foundation he never expected. "We'll talk Monday," he insisted. "No," she said, "we won't." "I'm done." He blinked, completely unprepared for her defiance. "You're emotional. You'll regret this." Her answer remained steady. "The only thing I regret is letting you behave as though you had this much control." The silence that followed felt as if the entire restaurant were holding its breath. Ronan finally gave a cold, dismissive laugh and walked away, leaving nothing behind but tension. When he was gone, Leia looked at me. Truly looked at me, for the first time all night. Her eyes shimmered with guilt and exhaustion. "I should have told you," she said. "I let him cross boundaries because I didn't want anyone to be disappointed. I didn't cheat, Callum. I didn't betray you, but I let him take space that should never have been his. And I'm sorry." I leaned back, allowing the truth to settle inside me. I believed her, not because I needed to, but because her voice, her fear, and her strength all aligned. She'd been drowning quietly for months. And tonight, she finally reached the surface. "You should have trusted me with all this," I said quietly. "I'm your husband." "I know," she whispered, "and I want to rebuild that trust if you'll let me." I glanced toward the doorway where Ronan had disappeared. Then I looked back at the woman who chose herself and chose us that night. The evening was nothing like the anniversary I'd imagined. But for the first time in a long while, something honest had broken open between us. I reached across the table and took her trembling hand. "Let's begin again," I said. "No secrets, no pressure, no one else between us." Her breath trembled as she nodded. "Just us," she repeated. And there it was, the warmth I thought I'd lost. Not from the room, not from the flickering candles, but from her. The woman who finally remembered she belonged to no one, not a boss, not a job, but stood beside me as an equal, my partner, and I wasn't about to let a man like Ronan steal that from us.